Hello, my name is Tom Gellis, a former Marine officer. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Veterans Perspective. Today's show will feature Bethel Park resident Mr. William Knaus, who will share his World War II experiences with us. Welcome, Mr. Knaus, to the show. As a World War II veteran, what I'd like to do is take you back to December 1941, and if you could tell the audience what your recollections are as to when you found out about Pearl Harbor. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it ended up that we had a radio in our living room, and an announcement came in on the 6:45 news that Pearl Harbor was attacked, and a disaster was very high in it, and it looks like now the government's going to have to speak up. And then I went and told my dad about it, back and forth. He says, well, he hoped it wasn't that bad. And then about 2 or 3 days later, there was rumors around there's going to be a draft. And at that stage, I went over things with my dad and that. And then when Jim Hager came in and said, he's going to be the chairman of the draft. And I told Dad, I'll go down and sign up. Which is, but I went down to sign up as a Marine Corps.
Oh, is that right?
Right.
I'll be darned.
You know, and they wouldn't take me. And so I went across the hallway, and there was a first lieutenant there, and I sat down with him, and I explained to him my background. And he wanted everything off of me. He wanted to know what I did at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it seemed that the information he got, I think Jim Hager must have told him, look, he's a boy that's 21 years old now, and he's been working for almost 10 years, and he's well diversified. So the lieutenant took everything that I did for the last 10 years, and I think that's what really got me into being stuck in, instead of the infantry, it got me stuck into things to do around the quartermaster way. So when I went down to Florida, I was infantry. When I left Florida and went to New Jersey, they made me the adjutant. In the meantime, I took the warrant officer test and I became a warrant officer. I like that. It got paid more than a lieutenant.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you had, they couldn't put you for officer of the day, and you had a pretty loose life on it. So when I went on the boat, the colonel said, you're going to be the adjutant. And I said, well, what that's composed of? There'll be a lieutenant from the boat there take you for a tour every morning at 6 o'clock. You'll go through the whole boat, find out how many sick people you have, and so forth and so on.
Now, when you were on board the ship, now my understanding is you were 21 when you went down, and you volunteered. You weren't drafted, you volunteered.
Right.
So you went through your basic training, went to Florida, came up to New Jersey. They loaded you on board ship for transit over to Europe. So you transited the Atlantic.
Yes.
What time frame was that, Mr. Knaus, when you did the transit over to Europe?
In January, end of January of 1942.
Okay.
We made first we were going to England. The submarines were so loaded down there, and the Marine Corps and the Navy with their small boats were dropping mines like crazy all over. Actually, there wasn't a day that we didn't have 2 or 3 training programs with getting everybody with life preservers on, teaching them what boat to get into, and so forth and so on. And all of a sudden, bingo. We were told we're not going to England. The marine submarines are so plentiful. We're going to the Mediterranean.
I'll be darned. So there were some concerns while you were transiting about, we see movies now or newsreels about the wolf packs, the German wolf packs and their submarines. So in general, there was a concern as you transited there about being torpedoed, correct?
Right.
And you were doing those drills just to be ready for that in case of the worst case scenario happened.
Yeah, well, and the one that I worry about all the time was the ones that were seasick. And we had to feed them and everything because they couldn't get out of bed.
And for those of you in Bethel Park that don't know me, I am Mr. Bold, one of the many stars here at Bethel Park TV, Channel 7. I hope that the folks in Bethel Park understand what we have here in the way of BPTV, the asset that the television station, the public television station, is to the community of Bethel Park. For Mr. Bold personally, one of the things that I would like to do, and I've talked to Dave about this, is a show gearing itself towards veterans. And I would throw out an invitation to the veterans in our audience here in Bethel Park or around the South Hills. If you want to contact Dave Cable here at the station and let them know that you would be willing to share your experiences, especially the World War II veterans who are losing here at an alarming rate, and pretty soon there's not going to be many of them left. I would love to get them on TV if they would be willing and interview them.
Soldiers and sailors, it is not known whether the French African Army will contest our landing, but all resistance, by whomever offered, must be destroyed.
Well, we hit Algiers and we invaded them. And the Germans were not shooting at us. But a little Messerschmitt and a 190 came down and strafed the boat.
I'll be darned.
Well, we tried like crazy because we were scared to death that he was going to drop a bomb on the boat. So we went to work on it right away and worked, and we got everybody off. It took 43 hours to empty the boat and get everybody. The 44th hour, I collapsed.
So now this was North Africa, correct?
Right.
So you made a landing in North Africa.
Right.
Now, what was your experience there? Desert or?
Well, no, it was a farmland.
Okay.
Because it was up near the Mediterranean Sea, and we were told by the English that there's food in the warehouses up there, because you know it was England's colony, and so I went over there. There was no food. There was nothing. So fortunately, we had some little packages, you know. So we ate those up, and so I went up to Harwell and I said, they're empty. So he went up to Eisenhower's headquarters, which was up at Algiers, and raised hell with him. He told Harwell, look, why don't you get somebody to see that you can buy food down there, because this English place were shipping food to France. So he came back to me and he says, we're going to have to buy some food. I said, well, you know. So we went around to all the officers and got all the money we could find. So I went down there, and the first thing I saw, a bundle of eggs. And I said to him, I'll buy so many eggs and so forth. And he said something about 3 cents, and I said, I'll give you 2 cents. So we paid 2 cents.
A little bit of haggling there.
Yeah, we got 2 cents there. So I start bringing, now comes all the real work. I went and got an oat box, mother's oat box, and I had to go get a connection with the system to get some electricity to put a light bulb inside of there. Then I went and cut a hole in and you could candle the eggs. Well, Out of the first load, we had about 24 of them that were bad eggs, which means, you know, a little red spot inside the egg. So we just thought we were eating eggs. And then Spam came out. You heard about Spam.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what did the men think of Spam? What did the men think of Spam?
It was horrible. They didn't like it, but they ate it because there was nothing there else to eat, you know. Well, then I went and got chickens. And then I went and got sheep, because the Arabs do not eat meat unless it's been killed there and right in front of them, and they'll eat it.
Oh, okay.
So we couldn't kill something today and give it to them tomorrow. Well, we did give it because they gave us a couple of them with no money. So finally the boys had some lamb.
Now, in your younger days, it's my understanding that you had to take care of chickens
Yes.
for your family store.
Yeah.
Now, did you do any of the processing or dressing of the sheep? Did you
Yeah.
personally do that?
For me to earn some money, I had to scrape the hairs off of the hog
Okay.
into a bag, and then I would take it down to Penn Avenue to the paint shop, and they would buy the hog.
So this is when you were still back. This
Yeah.
was before going into the service.
Right.
So you had some experience there.
Yes.
So that served you well over in North Africa then,
Yes,
right?
it
That
did.
experience.
Yeah, I did. And what happened was, Harvell took some food up to Eisenhower, and then Eisenhower said, "Why don't you make him an officer?" He was a warrant officer at that time.
You were.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, he came back and he says, "Bill, you want to be a second lieutenant? I got to take a bust and pay." he says, "Come on." I finally said yes to him.
You keep mentioning a Mr. or a gentleman by the name of Harvell. Can you let the audience know who was?
He was a commanding officer of the division.
Okay.
And he was an individual from Boston. And he, during 1934, he took care of the CCCs. Do you remember them?
Well, I understand it's Civilian Conservation
Right.
Corps.
They were
camps?
cleaning up the forest.
Okay.
Now, the government gave him all the time that he spent on that. They gave it to him so he could move up the ladder, and that's how he became a colonel.
When you knew him, he was a colonel?
Yes.
Okay.
In that situation. That night it rained also, and we dug holes up on the hillside, and everybody was wet. So next morning we went down to the hangars, and I'm in the hangar, laying on the concrete. A guy come in and said, "I'm looking for Knauss. Where in the hell's he at?" He walked over. Who was it? It was a pilot from Bethel Park.
No kidding. I'll be darned.
His father was the doctor down on Clifton Road.
I'll be darned.
And he said to me, "I got orders to take you and one whole company to the front, and I'm going to fly you in the afternoon." I said, "So we went and got some clothes and so forth and so on, and then he pulled up and he loaded us in the plane." And he always was that kind of a pilot. He did it in Bethel Park too.
Okay.
He also did it on Smithfield Bridge too. He was that type of, but he helped me a lot in life. So we piled in. Well, he was doing this, hillsides, because he was staying low, because we had that lousy P-39. Every time they got into a fight, P-39 got shot down.
Wow.
They could not beat that Messerschmitt Net 190 on it. We were only there now about 5 days. And he told me, he says, "Bill," he says, "I'm going to land on an open field approximately half a mile from the front line." He said, "And I'm going to not stop the plane. I'm going to get it down to the speed is 10 miles. I want you to push everybody off the airplane." I said, "Okay." So he came down, he put it down ice. He came down, went into he hollered, "Unload!" And I threw the doors open, everybody was jumping out. Well, 3 of them broke legs. He got down to the field and he turned around, he was gone. And the Germans throwed some 88s at us. Those 88s were so damn accurate. And the reason for it was they surveyed everything. And they could go to those surveys and they could pick out a half a mile or a quarter mile square, and that 88 would come at you. A couple 88, then no more. And we're sitting there. So I didn't know what to do. We didn't have any trucks. We had ammo and everything else that we could carry on it. So I turned around and I went up to Harvell and I said, "What are we going to do?" He says, "I don't know." A young fella come running in and says, "Hey, there's a guy up there that's doing ABC." When I was 12 years old to 14, Bethel Church over here taught me how to do that.
I'll be darned.
Right. So I right away got up there with a flag, you know, back and forth and that, and I got an answer out of him, and 4 hours later he had 10 trucks down there.
I'll be darned.
And we went back to Algiers.
Okay.
And then we had Patton up on the Mediterranean, and he was winning the battles. We were not being successful with Montgomery. Every time he fought the Germans kicked the hell out of him. And now he was only 12 miles from Cairo. So what happened on it, the Englishman turned around and drew back, and he kept coming back. And Patton is waiting for him up in Tunisia. And that. Finally, after almost a month, he finally showed up at Tunisia and Patton was there. And well, the French was very happy about it because it was a French colony. They had a beautiful parade and everything else and that. And the next thing you know, we were scheduled for Sicily.
Okay. Now, did you meet General Patton while you were in the
Yes.
in North Africa? So you actually met General Patton.
And I saw him do a trick that I would have never done.
I've shown an interest in making home movies. Me and some buddies would just grab a camera and you just start making these videos, and then you realize at some point that this isn't just a hobby anymore, it's something that you actually want to pursue, and there's this great facility right down the road, BPTV. A lot of people will try to do these productions on their own, and one of the things they don't have is the equipment, you know, but right here is everything she needs in one nice little bundle. There's lights, cameras, reflectors, dollies, all kinds of little knickknacks, like anything that you'd want to use that you would need for a production, you have it right here, like it's all right here. You can make your own feature movie just with the stuff from this studio. Come meet Dave Cable, let him show you around, and I think you'll realize that this is something that you could fall into regardless of your level of expertise, whether you're a beginner or even if you're a more advanced learner. There's something here for everyone, and I feel that you just need to come through and just be a part of the experience and just watch and learn, and you know, let Dave be your guide.
Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always.
Well, what I'd like to do now is, once the North Africa campaign wrapped up, where did you go from North Africa?
Well, I was on Sicily, and went up over where Palermo is, and the Germans were retreating, and they were blowing the roads off into the ocean.
Okay.
He got the construction gangs, and they were building roads back up, and the only way they could close some of those, they made a sort of a little bridge. Patton, no patient. He never had patients. He went down to the station hospital that we had there, and there was too many guys down there said they were sick. And he grabbed one by the throat and said, "You son of, you're not sick. Get out of here." Well, the kid wrote a letter home to Mama. The next thing you know, Eisenhower is pulling him out.
I'll be darned. Yeah, I've seen those in the newsreels about those incidents there in the hospital.
But the braveness, the engineer says, "Okay, the road's there." He was in the Jeep, and he was the first one across.
General Patton was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right.
So you landed in, so we've gone from Africa now, you made a landing in Sicily.
Right.
Now, once the Sicily campaign wrapped up, where did you head from there?
Salerno.
Okay.
And we lost. We invaded. I didn't invade it. I was in Palermo, and they invaded, and the Germans just knocked them right out. They had to all come back. The paratroopers was down too. They came back. Then retrained, re-equipped, and everything, and they went. This time they made it, but we lost a Bethel Park boy. His name was Caustic. He lived up on Bertha Street. He was a paratrooper. He lost it. I went down there when we put the body in the box and shipped to the United States on him. And then after that, we made the movement. We started the move up along that. And in the meantime, Harvell turned around and went over to the Adriatic, to Bari, Italy, because the English had been over there and cleaned everything out, all the glass and everything, to take to London because the Germans are bombing all the glass. So I went over there for a little bit, and then they started to move up, and they got to Naples. And then they ran into the Germans there in the mountain. And they couldn't get the Germans out. They just couldn't get them out, couldn't get them out. Eisenhower turned around and put the Texas Division in. And they attacked that mountain. They destroyed the whole division.
Wow. So you finished up then in Italy, the Italian campaign. Just so that the audience knows, Sicily is part of Italy, but it's an island.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had Sicily, the island,
Yeah.
and then you went on to the mainland of Italy.
Right.
And then the Italian campaign ended, and did you then head to England to get ready for D-Day?
No, we have the Germans instilled in Rome.
Okay.
So they didn't have much of a problem getting him out of there. That he went. So the next thing I know, I'm in Rome, and that was very educational on them. They decided that they were going to go out into the sea and put Pollux tanks and go in front, in the back of the German line, which was about 20 miles on it. He made a successful entry, beautiful entry. Instead of him going all the way across Italy, he went halfway and stopped. Mm-hmm. And that's what created the problem. The Germans backed up and went in and was operating out of half of Italy, and Pollock had the other half on it. And that's how he got banged up. Gotcha. In that.
Well, we're running short on time, Mr. Knauss. What do you remember about getting ready for D-Day?
They said to us, "We're going all the way to the river and stop the Russians from coming into Polish."
Okay.
So we piled in, and away we went. We went up through Slovenia, over to Austria, over to Hungary. Boy, we were making good time all the way down the line. You know. Well, you know what our great president did do? He made a deal with Stalin. And Churchill, see, they voted that they were going to put our troops on the river line, which divided Europe from Russia. He went and told Churchill, I changed my mind. I'm going to vote Stalin. So the vote was 2 to 1. Mm-hmm. Boy, Churchill just went right through the ceiling. And the next thing you know, they're in Berlin.
I'll be darned.
And that's what caused the Cold War.
Now, what do you recall about the time when you learned that the war in Europe was over? So that was May 1945.
Yeah, we picked it up real quick because we were told to turn around and go to Naples because you're going to get on a boat and you're going to Okinawa.
Oh, is that right?
See? So we were on a constant move. Mm-hmm. By that time, I was a major.
Okay. Now, when you finished up, and in wrapping up the interview, when you finished up, what rank were you when you finally finished your military service?
A lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel.
Right.
And interesting people. Now, you said you experienced or met General Patton. What other interesting or famous type individuals that our audience would recognize did you meet?
I was fighting with MacArthur.
I'll be darned. So you had personal contact with General MacArthur?
Yes.
And did you meet personally with General Eisenhower at any time?
Only one time when he pinned a second lieutenant on me.
I'll be darned. So you had your second lieutenant bars pinned on you by General Eisenhower.
All right.
Well, Mr. Knauss, I certainly do appreciate you spending time with us, sharing your experiences there in World War II with the audience. You're a treasure here for Bethel Park, and I certainly do appreciate you taking time. Thank you very much, sir.
Right.
Again, I would like to thank Mr. Knauss for sharing his World War II experiences with us. I thank you, my audience, for watching Veterans Perspective, and I invite you to tune in to BPTV Channel 7 for future episodes of the show. This is Tom Gellis. Good day.